Welcome everybody to your feedback session. This is recorded and shared back, so I will talk to the screen sometimes for you people that are watching it on repeat. That's always very weird. Thank you guys, all of you, for being part of this journey in the first place. Yeah, it was a total experiment for us, and it's really surpassed what we expected it to be. It was always intended to be a way to create a learning experience and to create exposure to what people are thinking and doing out in the industry to help us kind of lift our game. By the comments and the views and the feedback that it's getting, it is achieving that, probably beyond what we ever thought it could. It's been very inspirational ourselves, like participating and like seeing what you guys come back with. So I think like be really proud of yourselves. First of all, taking on the challenge because you did expose yourself to the world. For like meeting those deadlines and getting the stuff in, because I know it doesn't take, like, it's not a 2-minute job. And yeah, for what you did come up with, because it was pretty cool. So the way I'm going to do today is, in true learning and development style, we're going to do some reflective practice. So the first thing is you guys starting up with what are your takeaways? What did you learn from your own perspective by being part of this? Then we'll give you general feedback around like what we observed, if you've missed anything. And then we can talk about like specific questions you have for your kind of future journey as a learning designer. So, well, I guess in terms of the reflection, it was always around 3 criteria mainly, which was, could you meet the brief? So things like the budget and stuff. And then there was a visual design aspect, and then there was the instructional design aspect. So what were your key takeaways that you reflected on or noticed or observed, because you would have been watching the show, that were common themes that came through that you're now thinking about putting into your practice moving forward?
My visuals have got to be a lot stronger.
Mm-hmm.
I've got to see the initial design as a whole part of the pitch, as opposed to just an introduction to developing it properly later. So it's using that whole opportunity to sell it right from the start. Yeah.
Why do you think that's important?
Capture their imagination, capture their interest right up front. They can see what you've got to offer next, but if they don't bother turning the page, they're never going to see it. So you got to make them turn the first page.
Yeah, it's like your resume. You know, like they say it's in like less than 7 seconds, someone makes a judgment based on the look and feel of your resume. So your proposal or the email that you send to your stakeholder is the same deal. You have to capture their attention. First impressions are so important with everything. And that comes from like a website that you land on to book your holiday, to an app that you might do for fitness, or like a chat app that you choose. Like a lot of that is around the user interface and the user experience that you have. So it's really important to do that. Another reason for the value that we've seen with that is like our clients, and when I say clients, I mean like stakeholders. It doesn't matter if you're in-house or like a freelancer or a consultant, is that they don't think like us. So it's our responsibility to communicate the full picture to them of what they can expect, because they can't do it in their heads. So if you've ever had a storyboard come back and you think it's approved, and then you go and do something with it, and then they go, oh, hold on, like, no, we didn't think it was going to be like that. That's a prime example of them not being able to visualize the end result. So sometimes you can get very protective and think, I don't want to give away all my secrets. This is my IP, things like that. My belief at Bella Vista Studios is give it away, because if you give it away and paint that picture, they have no questions, no doubt, no fears that you can help them get to where they need to be. And that's why it's easier for them to make a decision on why you're the right consultant, or your solution is the right solution they need to fix their problem. What else? Or we can keep discussing that, but
I think from my perspective and from my brief, I really data dumped a lot of stuff into mine, and I felt like it would have been more appropriate if it wasn't like just submitting a PDF document, if we were actually brought in to do the presentation,
Yeah.
as opposed to just submitting a 2-pager, which some of the commentary that happened on the video did not accurately reflect what was actually in my brief.
Cool. So I guess 2 parts on that I'm hearing. And in the reality, we don't always get the opportunity to communicate. So like sometimes it is respond to an email and you're hoping to like get that done. So we have to get better at like our written responses. The way I always think about it is I apply instructional design to my emails, because at the end of the day, there's a problem to be solved and a goal to be achieved. So think about that. And another part of that is like how you visually represent things in the PDF. You know, there's, when we do just say, for example, e-learning or a PowerPoint slide or like a workbook handbook, we use things like icons to represent information so that it can be seen at a glance and draw the eye into, this is what I'm thinking, and then the explanation is underneath. So that would be my like tips for that side of it. And then as the show goes on, actually maybe the next round, no, the one after that, people will have to do videos and speak to it more. The reason we couldn't do that for 64 is like, you can already see that there's like 8 hours of footage just for 64 participants. So we didn't have time to do it at that point. But as it goes on, they will have to, because the briefs get harder, and they will kind of do like a pitch, I guess, but it's going to be in 3 minutes or less. So some people even that have made videos, you know, they're spending 10 minutes trying to explain it. But my tip is that what you should take away is, in 7 seconds, win someone over to actually pay attention and to read your PDF, to read your email or your image, whatever you send back in response. What else?
I guess probably the biggest and most immediate thing I've taken away from it, so far, is that I've gone back and done a bit of review of how we operate in terms of our pitching for projects and how we price our work, based on some of the comments in the, especially in the round 32 around budgeting and things like that.
Yeah.
And it's led to us changing quite a bit about how we actually handle project proposals, and it certainly changed our pricing structure somewhat, which has been really helpful actually.
So that's pretty cool.
Yes. If we suddenly have no business, I know where to lay the blame. That's
sorry, connection's dropping out now.
Oh right. but yeah, I think for us as a small business that only, we only started just over a year ago, getting that kind of insight has been massively useful, because it's not insight you otherwise ever really get. You tend to get a lot of best practice sharing around the actual process of instructional design or the technical elements of the job. There's not a lot of best practice sharing about how to actually run this as a successful business.
Yeah.
So that's been hugely valuable for me and for us.
That's really cool. What specifically around that? And we had to be conscious, as you know, we didn't go into a lot of feedback in the show. We are limited for time, and it was up to the industry to vote as well. So when we were on screen, we weren't judges and neither was the guest. So we were limited on that. And always feedback is subjective anyway. And what I'm giving you now is my experience, you know what I mean? And what you guys are giving is your experience. But what specific, I was going to say, because we had a blend of in-house and external, it was hard to talk about the business side of things, because the people in-house then they get disconnected and say, well, we don't have to pitch like this. And so we had to get a balance because of who the participants are. But I'd love to know what specifically you have learned on that business budget type of side.
So I think the thing that stuck with us is I for that one, put forwards what I considered to be quite a simple solution. The Me Plus You with the RSS feeds and the self management and all that kind of thing. And we considered that to be a kind of, oh, we're not sure if this will land very well. It's very basic. It's very simple. We wouldn't charge much for doing this kind of thing. And then the commentary was around this, oh, this is the kind of solution people really want. It's, you know, we don't know if this would be doable inside this budget. And it wasn't so much anything that someone said, this isn't in budget or this is undervalued. It was just that kind of, maybe we need to give that some thought, that led us to going away and speaking to basically anyone we could get hold of around what would you do for this, and it kind of sort of sparked us off on that next bit of driving our own development. And really thinking about how, you know, why was it that you guys, who have a lot of experience between the three people on there, if you three are saying this is great, this is this, we need to consider, you know, are we pitching ourselves correctly in the market? Which was a tough question, because it's always a little bit scary to, especially inside the first 2 years, to reposition your business. But it, you know, I think it was a good time to do it based on that. So it wasn't so much the direct feedback, it was what that sparked us to go and think about afterwards, and what we then found off the back of it.
I think we need to adapt always with our business side of it and with the learning solutions we're creating, right? Every day, new things are evolving in our industry and we need to keep up with it. And they're evolving because the human race is evolving. So if just the same way as you try to understand the needs of your learners and go and figure out what's important to them, you need to do the same thing for your business and understand what's important to our customers, what do they need from us. So continuously throughout your business journey, you will adapt and you will adjust, and you might do more instructional design at certain points because the market is telling you that's what's important right now. And then, I don't know, where there comes a time where everyone's like, we just need something really, really quickly, and they pump out horrible e-learning, you know. And then you become, then for a couple of years, that floats in. But then you also have the opportunity to control that as well and decide, what do we like working on? What are we going to say yes to? And what are we going to say no to? And especially if you're a business owner, you have that opportunity and you should take that responsibility because you've chosen to run a business for a certain reason, which is probably lifestyle choices. So don't get caught up in just a 9 to 5 like you had and you left because you hated it.
Yeah, I think that it's funny you mentioned actually the sort of type of work you take on, because that was the main reason that I left what I was doing, because I got a bit fed up with the it's what the client wants discussion in-house, and then when we outsourced things, we heard the same things being said, and I think there does need to be a bigger, and this competition is a great example of the fact of we don't need to do that. You look at every single thing that was entered from round 1 onwards, everything was a fantastic solution to a problem. There's no reason for anyone in the industry to hide behind that it's what the client wants. And I think we need to be a lot braver in going back to clients and saying, in nicer wording, I'm the expert, you're paying me for a reason, listen to me. And I think that should be the biggest lesson for everyone, right?
I think it's also like in how you position, you know, I'm a learning expert. That whole part of the conversation, it's like you're paying me for my expertise. You're not paying me to present to you, you know, the solution that you want. You're paying me to present you with what the solution that you need and what's going to meet your business needs or your customer needs or what have you. And that's really where I think that we as instructional designers kind of need to position ourselves as I have the expertise at what is good for student learning or for adult learning, and really just reiterating, this is what you're paying me for.
Yeah, 100% agree. And I think what I'd just extend on that for people that are not there themselves. Sometimes there's a barrier and a fear thing around hierarchy, because our decision makers tend to be people that are executives or they're HR directors and people like that. So sometimes we can have imposter syndrome and not feel confident to say that. So extending on what Tom and then now Rachel's expanded on, it's really important to know you're the expert and be okay with saying, hey, Mr. or I always do this and people pay me up, but Mr. CEO, Mrs. CEO, or just CEO, you know, you're the expert at running the business as a whole, but look at all the people that you have to bring this business and to operate as it is. You couldn't do it alone, and you hire all these people to help you, and trust that I am the expert, just like you're the expert to manage all of that. I am the expert to manage this part of the portfolio. And if you've got this goal, I'm the person that's going to get you there. Cool. Also on the budget, what was really interesting for us was, you know, we had a 5 times budget in the first one. Now, you didn't really know what the next one meant, but what was interesting for us is people presenting things at that first price point at 25,000, and then the same kind of solutions come up in round 2. So people saying that what they could do in a 25K budget, they're basically saying we can also do it in a 5K budget. So I think that was probably picked up in some of the feedback from the industry. You know, a lot of the solutions that I'd say that came through in that second round are around, you know, you didn't have time to do proper analysis. You didn't have time to do proper instructional design. You had to make sacrifices. And a lot of you, I would think the analysis, if on a bigger project, would just take that alone, that time or that effort or that budget to achieve. But everyone's saying we could do the analysis, the instructional design, and the solution. Or some people were just saying, we'll do the solution, but you didn't know the problem, right? Because he needed well-being help, but you're saying we'll do an e-learning module, but what were you developing the e-learning module on? Because you had no content to work with. So I think being very conscious of, you know, what is possible and what are the components of the project that you need to complete to deliver a solution to your client, and really allocating, these are the itemized things, just a project plan. Itemized things I need to achieve, effort it's going to take me to get there. Okay, if I can't do it in the budget, I need to eliminate things, reduce scope, or like Jonathan did it quite well, actually. He had, you know, the bronze, silver, gold, you know, and you see that on websites. You see the basic package, most popular package, and then the like gold standard, you know. So thinking about how the market in other industries are trying to present stuff, because sometimes clients, and this has happened to us, clients go, we've got this amount of money, or we've got this amount of days work. We want you to solve this problem. And you go, sounds great. We're just kind of fitting into the shell that you have a perceived idea around. But you know what's really going to help your problem is this, and it's going to cost you more money. But then they have something to compare it to, and they go, oh, that's really like, that actually sounds like it's going to have an impact in here. That's going to change behavior. That's going to get return on investment. Yes, we'll spend the extra money, or we'll allow the other time for you to achieve that.
Yeah, and like what I did in mine, because I had identified like out of the box solutions for mine. Then I also did an analysis of like, what are maybe some more like HR focused things that they could do for free, and how all of that analysis and like communication got done. And then for me, I tried to think of it in the context of, I live in, you know, middle of central Pennsylvania in a college town with like 100,000 people. Okay. So what would I personally do in terms of serving my community if a community organization approached me? So I actually wrote it in my brief that my time, I would work pro bono on the project because their organization needed the support and they were operating on a limited budget. So the out of the box tools kind of stayed under that budget. But if you would have added in my time to do the analysis and then the time to, you know, create PowerPoints and train instructors, or not instructors, but train staff, then, you know, that would have put it way over budget.
Yeah. I think your example, there was a few others like yours where it was, you spent the time thinking about solving the problem of the client. And that's where you were either, you've decided to do it pro bono, but other people decided that's where I'm putting my brain energy and that's where the money's going. And then they allocated some of the budget to do things really cheaply, but effectively, and do things that are cheap, so free. So for example, it might've been in yours actually, Rachel, but there was like the walking meetings. You know, like, so that doesn't cost. That's just literally you typing that up on a Word document and going, here's all these free ideas, email that out to supervisors and go make that happen internally. So a lot of those things, if you're putting them out to your client, are value add. And they go, okay, so we're going to get this thing, but then look at all these other things that we're getting with it that don't take time and effort, but have a big impact on the results in the business. So I would encourage you to be communicating those things to your clients and stakeholders as well, because we know the 70-20-10 model, 10% is the formal training that happens, you know. So when we can communicate that in our documents or our proposal or whatever it is, that yes, there's this event that's going to happen, but if you really want change, you need emails, you need posters, you need like walking meetings, all these things that holistically support culture or behavior change in your organization. That's where you move from being a order taker to someone that partners with a business and helps them achieve goals, works on strategy, get paid more money, work on more meaningful projects. Yeah.
And I think too, like from the client or the potential client perspective, it's really important to communicate, you know, how much you're willing to spend on the project and what's included in that pay. You know, if it's, you know, disseminated across whatever the solution is, whether you're buying an out-of-box tool and systems and hardware versus what you're paying in terms of people power.
Yeah, good point. Mark, you want to jump in? What's your reflection, G?
Well, I'm just taking in what everyone else has been saying. Yeah, I think, I guess my big takeaway, well, first off, I've been freelancing for, this is year 6 now, and I've never done a brief in this way. So now I feel like if that opportunity comes up, I'm, you know, I feel like I have food for thought. Because I think getting clients is frequently more organic than that for me. Okay. And I would never put in that much work before I sign a contract and know I'm getting paid for it.
Interesting. Why? Is that because of budget? Is it like maybe a retainer type agreement? Why do you think you don't have to sell your services?
I think just I do sell my services, but it's frequently a phone call or a series of emails or something, as opposed to putting together something that I'm going to put time into. And I guess in my first year, I saw a lot of things like that, and I realized that I could waste a lot of time doing that. So now, and I'm a one-man operation with some subcontractors, so I'm not going for those $1 million contracts. But I think the big takeaway I was in round 1. I got knocked out. I was competing against someone who had a really strong entry. But I think my big takeaway was in branding the document itself. I focused a lot on sort of my screenshots and my images, and then I just, you know, picked a sans serif font and wrote a text description of what was happening. And I was really inspired by some other people who even branded the narrative portions of it. And I thought, that's something I definitely want to do if and when I go this route in my business. And I thought especially, I think the person I was competing against also did a nice job where they were kind of calling out in their images, explaining what each portion did.
Oh, like using little lines to drop down, like this part is, And
I totally would have done that if I had even thought of it. You know, I think that was a great idea, and that's something I'm definitely taking away.
I think this is like one of the big intents for us to help the industry understand is that as an instructional designer, you do need to start getting very good at visual design, graphic design, user interface, user experience. What is going to happen is that in time, our industry and the graphic design industry, the people that create apps, that create websites, they're going to get closer and closer, and they're going to become one. Now, we will have the benefit of instructional design skills, but they can learn them, right? So what we want to do is, and we're seeing it already happen in the market, where they're going to web agencies to get things created for them because they want them to look sexy. Now, the graphic design industry is massive, flooded. Oh God, you don't want that to happen. What you need to do is go, I am the full package. You want something that looks sexy and solves your problem and gets results. That's what a learning designer is about. So take that responsibility on yourselves to start learning, or hire someone, because graphic design, you sometimes, like, I can appreciate what good design looks like, but I can't necessarily do it very well. I'll come to you now in a sec, Rach, because I know you're going to want to jump in. I can't necessarily like replicate it as well as I would like to. So hire people to do that, become a partnership. But what we are starting to see is change management. They are the skills we need. Marketing, branding, sales, graphic design. We are starting to be this holistic problem solver for organizations. We're very valuable to organizations, but if they don't understand our value, they will go to someone and compete on price, and that may be the graphic design industry. I'll let you go, Rachel. What are you going to say?
Yeah, hold on a second. Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry, so my whole thing is more from the perspective of, you know, we kind of serve as a jack of all trades is really what instructional design can end up being. But some of us also have our niches, and it's okay to have our niches. You don't have to pigeonhole yourself and be a jack of all trades and be strong in graphic design. You just need to know when you need to communicate that appropriately and say, hey, I'm going to need support on this. I do LMS administration. I am not a computer programmer. So if I had to have somebody hired to write an API, I know how to communicate what I need my systems to be able to do, but I'm not necessarily the one who has the expertise to set that up. It's really identifying when you need to bring in another expert.
Agreed. Any more reflections?
I'm just thinking of something as Mark was talking, that while the brief approach can be quite a new thing for some of us, including me, it would probably be worth going back over some of the projects that we've already done and delivered, and retrospectively creating a pitch board for it. So get down on that piece of paper what we intended and what we actually delivered, because we could actually use that with clients as well.
Yeah.
You know, it becomes another version of a portfolio, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And it's good practice because we know what we're aiming for because we've already done it.
I think it's a good idea. You start to, the process of that, because I've gone through it myself, is you start to understand your own process. What do we do in the different stages of a project? So for us, we're very human-centered design focused. So we do things like personas and empathy maps early on. We also do action mapping, you know, so doing that over time and repeatedly has really got clear on what our end-to-end process is. And now in the past, proposals, like, I bloody hated doing them. They'd take me like 2 days if I had to do like a decent one, right? And it was because if the money reward would have been there, I wouldn't do it for someone that's like, oh, can you just give me a proposal? Now, I won't do proposals for people like that. I talk about money up front in the very first phone call or the very first email to see where they're at. But when you basically get a suite of proposals and you can just adapt them for future ones, just the language, stuff like that. And then what that does mean is where you may not have done it in the past because you're like, I don't have time or whatever, you can just tweak it, spend an hour or two tweaking it, put it back to the client, and they're like, wow, if this is the effort that you put into a proposal, you're going to be pretty exceptional when you actually are engaged to help us. Any other reflections?
I had a thought about the way the contest is run, but separate from takeaways from my
Cool.
experience. I don't know, is this an appropriate time for that?
Let me just see if I've covered. Some people sent questions that couldn't make
Sure.
it, and then we can move into that. Yeah, I think that's all. G. Yeah, go for it.
Oh, my thought was just, if I were to tweak this, you know, if I were running it myself, I think
Yeah.
one change I might make would be to have voting based on the briefs themselves, as opposed to the videos of people discussing the briefs, because I feel like the briefs should speak for themselves, and the judgment should be on that, as opposed to one or more experts' takeaways from it. And I feel like, in my opinion, that's the one change I was sort of wishing for.
Yeah. Does it look, this is so new to us. We've never done it before, you know, so we're going to make mistakes and not get it right. And every time we're learning, every time we get off a video, every time we see someone's response come through, we learn, and we can only adapt and improve.
Sure. No, I mean, it's great too. And you built this great community. I think they're really fun to watch. I would have just done the voting before the YouTube.
Well, the whole idea of the public being able to vote was because in the industry, our experience is that it goes to panels and you have to pay for your award. And you have to, you know, put in a proposal of why you think your project is the best. And we don't, my values is that you shouldn't have to pay to be recognized for good learning design. So what we wanted to do was give the opportunity for the industry, for our peers to vote and say that is good learning design, not some person, because always judgment is subjective, even if there's criteria. So we can't eliminate biases that come up. What we did with the first one was we knew it was a competition for all levels of learning design. So that's why it was literally, which one do you like better? And it didn't go into the detail of the criteria of the brief.
Okay.
When we saw, because, and it was, we've been very transparent with how it's done. Like we did a name generator mixy up thing to place people against each other. So we didn't actually, and like a lot of you, like I didn't know half, not even half, I probably know like 5 people before it started kind of thing. So it's not like I could go person A and person B, like they're the best people I've ever seen. We can't have them vote against each other because one would get knocked out. Like, so we've been very transparent about how we're doing it. It was a competition for all levels. So at that point, we decided it was really important to just have people vote against which was the best, because everyone was getting a feel for it. And then what moved on to that is the criteria of the last one, where it was based on the brief. And we communicated that and said, now it's not who you like better. It is like it's always going to be who you like better or who you think meets the brief better. But then we said, no, you have to get it within the criteria. So that's why it was very specific. If you did the voting yourselves, like there was lots of criteria. What was I going to say?
I think what Mark is hinting at here is that as us as industry professionals, I liked that I was able to go and review the briefs on the website as opposed to listening to all of the commentary, so that I could judge for myself what my preference was for who I thought did a better job, and I could vote accordingly.
Yeah, actually, so on that was made available to voters. So everyone could go to the Milanote where you guys are, and all of your examples were placed up and they could go read them. So they had the opportunity, like it's public. So whenever we were putting stuff out to the vote, we were saying, go to the Milanote and have a look, so that they could read your things in detail. Because I could only do a summary of your solutions. But
right. Yeah, I mean, you only have so many.
Yeah, but that also comes back to you communicating your stuff, and this is really important, to paint the full picture, because it took me hours to prepare, because I had to go through, read them all. What are the key things that I'm seeing here? And then if you felt you were misrepresented, I would say you didn't communicate it clearly enough. I'm your client in this instance. You didn't communicate it clearly enough for me to be able to articulate it back to my stakeholders, which are the viewers. So it's the same in the workplace, you know?
Yeah, no, I don't think it was anything about being misrepresented. I think people, you know, especially as instructional designers, we know people don't always spend the time to really think about something as deeply as we might like them to. So I think if there's a short way for someone to watch a quick wrap up, as opposed to actually look at the document themselves, chances are slim that they're going to actually read it. That's my only point.
And I think it raises quite an interesting conversation. So I've discussed a lot with people sort of since I left full-time employment and when I was there, especially when new IDs joined. And I've got a firm belief that actually instructional designers and people in the learning industry are not always the best people to judge the effectiveness of a proposed learning solution. Often the target audience are the people who actually go, yeah, I would engage with that. Because, you know, let's all be honest, when we design something, we fall in love with it. We put everything we've got into what's going on in front of us. And I know I've spent hours designing something, absolutely falling in love with it, just for a client to go, not sure our people will really get involved with that. And I want to fight them tooth and nail, but ultimately, if it's the audience that matters, not the designer. And I must admit, some of the most interesting feedback sort of around sort of people seeing the stuff we've put out has been from people in sales positions, customer service positions, people in call centers that I've worked in before, saying, "Oh, I wish we had learning that looked like that." Or I've had a few people turn around and go, "I don't think I'd actually use that if it really existed." And actually, I think, you know, moving away from the debate around what's good or bad instructional design, that's the kind of feedback that's invaluable to me from an end user, to say, would you do this? Would you engage with it? Would you actually learn something from it?
Yeah.
Rather than, is it technically what we might describe as a well-designed piece of learning?
It's a really good point, and that comes down to human-centered design. And I think what I would be encouraging you guys to do is get engaged only for the analysis. And say, we're going to go out and talk to your people and figure out what's going to actually impact them. This is what Thomas is saying, but this is what you can do out in the world. We want to speak to them, figure out their challenges, their pain points, what's going to help them. And then we're going to come back and we'll tell you what the solution will look like, because they will have told us. So yeah, I'd definitely encourage you to do that. That's you playing in the strategy place. That's you demonstrating the value you have to the business. That's repeat business, repeat clients, higher budgets, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, the fewer barriers you can have between you and the end user, the better, isn't it? Otherwise, you've got everybody's interpretation, and it's just another version of Chinese whispers. And by the time it's delivered again, another thing that we've just been given, why have we got this? And yet the guys that commissioned it at the top going, yeah, that's exactly what we wanted. That's brilliant. But it will achieve absolutely nothing. So yeah, totally agree.
Well, and I think at the end of the day, we are both instructional designers and business people. So for me anyway, there are times where I just shrug my shoulders and will produce something that I think maybe is not the best solution, but it's what the client wants and they're happy with it. And I'm in business, so I will give them what they want.
Yeah. And I think like we've been on that journey as well. So it's about, you know, yeah, you're like, this is a waste of time. But it's having those conversations at that point and saying, look, if this was given to me, this is how I'd solve it. And what normally comes back is they say, nah, do it the way we told you. And then it doesn't work out. And then they say, hey, remember that time when you were like talking about this and you said this would be better? Well, we're ready to listen now. So that means that the next time they engage you, you have the opportunity to do the right thing for them.
That sounds very familiar.
What else? Is there any questions specific you have around your feedback? Any questions about your future journey tips?
I think I mean, this is a little bit less about my feedback, but I think my last comment was a bit of a critique, and I want to balance it with, I think this is such a great idea, and I love all of the enthusiasm about it. And yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, thank you. We, like, as I said, it's an experiment. We saw this opportunity to help people learn, and we've run with it. We haven't always got it right. We're learning ourselves. Like, we're instructional designers. We're not bloody like event people, but we're trying that out. You know, so I guess we'll always improve, but we're just grateful that it has been embraced, and it just shows the need that we perceived in the market was there. And hopefully this evolves into something that becomes bigger and better every time we do it, if we run it again, you know. But just like, it is really incredible, the stuff that people are learning from watching the show and seeing how you've even not thought about using Articulate 360 as a tool or Captivate, and that learning looks like other things like walking meetings, like for culture change, or posters or emails. Some people have never thought that way before. So imagine the impact that this opportunity that you guys have been a part of on their learning experience as a learning designer, and then all the people that they serve, all their thousands of learners that they'll have in their lifetime will have a better life because of seeing you guys participate in this. So that's pretty epic, I reckon.
I definitely think that it was good to participate in the challenge and just kind of like think outside of like the everyday muck that we're kind of all dealing with in our careers. So that was definitely a good takeaway, and something that I would like to see from our community, like going forward. Yeah. Just figuring out a way that, like, even just like a little ad hoc, like, hey, a client comes in with this idea, what's your 30-second pitch? Yeah. Like something like that to like keep you on your toes would be really beneficial, I think, to our community.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. Might be one of the future briefs that we put people painstakingly through.
That's the one where they get an hour to prepare and submit.
Like, what's your elevator pitch? Like,
yeah. We should just get them in on a live Zoom, and we go, this is your time. Right, here's the brief, go, and see how they handle it. Oh God, I'd hate to be on the other end. The
bigger challenge could be is to get everybody on a Zoom meeting and have them come up with a solution together.
Ooh. Ideas. Well, we haven't written the next briefs. They always evolve as we go on. So
that actually
might see some of these featuring.
I mean, no more ideas then, please. Just simple stuff. Really simple things now.
No, we want it to get harder.
Doesn't matter. Been knocked out. Like, let's make it much harder.
They are getting harder, definitely. Even this storyboard one, like, it's going to be very interesting to see what comes through.
Tell me about it. I didn't realise the deadline had moved up.
Yeah, well, it's like half a day or something. Yeah, because you can't get enough time to get votes in and all that. So we're making it consistent because America's like 2 days behind us. So.
Oh, well, don't worry about that.
But oh no, actually, I'm not going to give you any clues.
So I'll just step off, and you can do whatever you're going to do, and I'll just get to recording. It's fine. No, I was going to say, actually, along what everyone else was saying there, the whole idea behind that and the conference behind the show was it was a really interesting thing. We missed the deadline to apply to speak, but it was such a refreshing sight to see a conference that just welcomed anyone who wanted to speak. Obviously, yeah, it's an application and selection process, but as anyone that's ever wanted to speak at conferences before knows, usually it's and how much money would you like to give us for some airtime at our conference to discuss something. By the way, please make sure it's a sales pitch and so on and so forth. And they're horrific to attend, as I'm sure we've all been to. And especially, it pretty much shuts out freelancing individuals, contractors, small businesses from ever actually getting up on the stage. Because who's got a couple of £1,000 to throw at an hour of talking to people? Not many of us, if we're honest. So I thought that was fantastic. And I think it shows, when you look at the lineup of speakers, there's a lot of people there that I know I've never heard of, and that is far more exciting to me than the same 10 names that you see at every conference giving the same speech about learning styles, where you just want to jump on the stage and strangle them because they don't know what they're talking about. They just pay to pay the same conversation again and again and again because they know it's a moneymaker for them. So I thought that was fantastic to see that there was just such this range of people speaking without having to shell out huge sums of money.
Oh, well, that's really nice that that's being reflected. I guess like the whole idea of the conference came from Kath and I's frustration in the industry, that we were craving development opportunities. And when we go to, particularly in Australia, Kath's been to DevLearn, I haven't ever been, but that's kind of the one that they say is awesome. And I know she's loved it, and I've heard people loving it. But for us in Australia to get to that point, like it's a very, like it'll cost us thousands and thousands because we got to fly there and, you know, it's very far away. So the frustration was that we didn't have something like that in Australia. And last year we started to actually do the learning conference and think about what that would look like for the Australian market. And then when we were like, well, actually our intention is like, we really want to shake up the industry and add value. And it's not about making money. It's about creating an opportunity for development, practical development, where, like you say, you don't, because I get so resentful when I'm sold to. So the whole thing with the learning conference is there is no selling happening. Like we will absolutely crucify someone. We're already working with the speakers anyway. They know that when they applied, and we work with them to rehearse, because that was a pain point of mine. I'd go to a conference sitting beside someone. I'm like, oh, what are you up to? And they're like, oh, I'm speaking in an hour. I'm just putting my presentation together. I'm like, are you kidding me? You know, so the whole thing is we're working with them. So it's rehearsed. So when they show up to add value on the day, like they're actually there doing their best job because we've really tweaked. So it came from our own frustration. And then the other thing was like, we went out to the market and said, learning designers, what do you want in your ideal perfect conference? You know, and we had, like, the response has been crazy, like over 100 people saying, this is what we need, this is what's missing, this is what we're craving, these are the skills we need to develop, these are the topics we need to learn. And that's how, like, it was human-centered design. What do you need to be better at what you do? And we'll create that experience because we believe we can do it, because we're so passionate, like it's coming from a place of passion. And then we also were like, we're paying the speakers to be involved because we think it's important to reward people for their IP and for the value and the time that they're going to put into it. So that's kind of scary, because like this is like Bella Vista Studios and Kath Ellis going, we actually want to add so much value that we're going to pay money to people to put more value out into the industry. But our intent with it is really pure, and we hope that it is received by the industry and that it does add value, because literally, like, some of the people, I didn't know all the speakers either, which is really cool because that resonated. There is like people on the circuit, you know, that kind of way, but what we are looking for is how can we get practical application from that person's submission that will help someone literally go out after that session and apply it straight away. So I think that's why you're seeing such a variety. I probably only knew less than 5 of the speakers on there before. So it wasn't like we're tapping people on the shoulder that are friends or that we know we're going to bring people in. It's like, what's the practical value we can get out there? And you're going to see like showcases, end-to-end good solutions. You're going to create a Glide app in Kath's session, you know, and then there's like the panel Q&A. So we're trying to give the industry what it's been asking for. So yeah, we're excited. It scares me, but yeah, we're really excited because our intention is coming from a place of love. 6 minutes, this is your time. So like, I'd love to give more value to you while you're here.
My cat is yowling in the background.
It's okay.
So, yeah, I just want to reiterate what Thomas brought forward is like, I really appreciate that you guys are coming from that place of love, because that is something that is a very big value add within our community, especially when we're in some of the communities, like there's Facebook groups and there are other communities where a lot of people in instructional design come from a multitude of backgrounds. And we just some of us just kind of like land in instructional design. Like my undergrad is in film and video production. And I always say, like, if I would have known about instructional design, I would have just like gone straight through and got my master's, and you know, that would have been my career trajectory. But I think if we're really focusing on, you know, serving our industry and kind of giving back to our industry, I think that really makes us work on those projects that create positive change. And I think that we can all agree that really in this time, we really need to focus and hone in on how can we as individuals focus our energies on creating that positive change.
Yeah.
What were the biggest trends or answers you got back from your respondents, Kim, when you said what do you want in the industry?
Yep.
So what were your top three that we all seem to be facing?
Development opportunity, number one, development opportunities aren't niche enough for learning designers. So a lot of conferences out there are learning and development focused, but they play at that higher level, not the practitioner level. So that's why this is a learning conference for learning designers specifically. That's why you're learning video, animation, instructional design, design thinking, very practitioner focused. So that was the number one thing, and that's why we've niched it down to where we're at. What was the other thing? I think a big challenge that you'll get actually a lot of value from is basically influencing stakeholders. So negotiation, proposals and quoting, project management, difficult conversations. So one of the keynote speakers, I don't know if you know her, but I followed her on YouTube for a long time. Her name's Emily Cohen, and she's got a book called Brutally Honest. And if you ever watch one of her talks or her podcasts that she's like on, she is just exceptional at how she gets results, doesn't impact emotion, and can get to the core of what needs to be said by not offending. And I think they're really valuable. Communication skills are so valuable to anyone. And what she will bring is, you know, the art of saying no. No, client, that's not the best thing for you. You know, also just how to communicate things, because I always was like very conscious of empathizing with you guys in terms of the hypersensitivity of someone talking about your work on YouTube, you know. And I'd say if you watched your episode and the minute your name was announced on that, you immediately are like, what's coming up, you know, like you're going to have this feeling in your body around it. So talking from that perspective of being able to pull out the ego and focus on the facts, not your emotional response. And that's a valuable skill when receiving feedback, but it's also a valuable skill when you're going into a meeting where someone can critique you, say you're wrong, not agree with you, you know. So I think that stakeholder management, being able to quote, Kath and I are going to do one where we're going to do a proposal and talk about the things that you should include in your contract, you know, being very specific on scope, review dates, review things that you like, how many times you allow them to review, because we both are very good at going, this is the scope you're getting and that's what's delivered. And we don't have complaints from customers. We don't have them saying, this is not what we expected. We need more feedback. But you can set yourself up with your systems and processes to be able to get that right from the beginning. So we want to help people with that, because I think the challenge out there, and we're business owners, so we have this business hat on there. Not everyone that goes out on their own has the business side and skill set. They're very good instructional designers, so there's an element of that. And then the third thing that they said was really hard is it's very hard to be inspired and see what is possible, because people are protective of their IP. They don't want to share their processes. So, and if people are sharing, they're sharing stuff to sell. So that's why it is a no sell zone. So the third thing is creating the opportunity to see what really good examples look like, to see what skills, see how to physically learn how to do something in practice right there and then. So yeah, an interactive experience that gets you personalized learning, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's great, because the competition started that by itself without the conference, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Showcasing the good work, see what's out there, what's possible, how people are reimagining things that we've never used for learning before. Instagram.
Yeah.
Genius. Yeah. Really good.
We're trying. We're always learning. All right.
Question about the conference. I feel like I've learned about so many tools I had never heard of, and techniques and ideas. Is anybody blogging about this, or some sort of wrap up to kind of capture it? Because it is, as you mentioned, it's difficult to watch hours of YouTube if you're working on other projects. And I have this fear that I'm missing some great ideas, because the ones I did catch were great, and I'm going to try and incorporate them into my work. But I'm wondering if someone's going to try and write this up, or that had been considered.
I hadn't thought about it, to be honest. Maybe it will happen in the future, but in the meantime, just jump onto the Milanote and flick through them as the quickest way. We might not get to it, like, to be honest. There's just so much going on.
Oh yeah,
To organize the
busy.
show is like incredibly, like, this whole thing is a full-time job, and we're trying to run our agencies at the time.
Right.
So it's a good point. I'll put it on our to-do list.
Sure.
Whether it makes priority, I don't know.
Understood. You do it for the next round. That's the competition, is that they've got to collate all of the good ideas so far and produce them into something. Yeah.
Maybe. Cool. I'm conscious we're at the end of time. Any final last questions, or you good to go on with your lives?
No, it's been good. Thanks, Kim.
That's all good. Well, our pleasure. Like, really appreciate you being part of it. Don't be strangers, like, reach out. We are a community. That's the whole thing, so there's great skills here. There's great skills watching back. Like, be friends, we can only lift each other up. So
thanks so much.
Thanks, Kim, for organizing this.
Yeah, pleasure. Thanks for being here. Have an awesome day.